Well, we're here with Lefty. He's off screen right now. We're doing some testimonials, and my name's Tim Russell, if you don't know me, and this is my wife, Ellen. And we're just going to chat for a bit about, I guess, what God's done in our lives for the last, I don't know how many years, how long we're going back, but just chatting about that and talking about it. We've been married for 13 years now. We have 5 kids, and let's see, what else was I going to say as we started? I don't remember, but we've been married again 13 years, and at the beginning of it, I remember we moved almost every 6 months. It was the first 4 years we had moved 8 times. A lot of time just around. Same city. Some of it was same city, whereas we had to just move somewhere else. Some of it was problems with the job, or just when I went into teaching, there was some upheaval because I had actually started my teaching credential after we were married, and so just a lot of moving around, a lot of uncertainty, I guess, at those times. But we were trusting God. We were.
Even I feel like, as tumultuous as it might have seemed those years, I feel like God used them to brought different people in our lives. We lived with several different people. We got a lot of godly wisdom for marriage, for parenting. It didn't feel very tumultuous at the time. I don't.
The hecticness almost became normal. And we lived, there's a time where we lived with my brother for a few months. There's another family we lived with, the Stockwells, who were just huge help for us. So even in, and we had to live with them because money. We just, for a while, we actually couldn't afford our own place. And, God even used those tough times to give us godly influences and godly times to be with other godly people to learn. Parenting, because we were obviously, at that time, Malcolm was born, our first, and everything, and just still learning how to be parents. I think a lot of the big things that I feel have shaped our lives since then started when we were actually living in Palm Springs area. I was starting to have some health issues, and we weren't sure what.
We didn't even, at the time, it didn't fully register that things were wrong. We're
Right.
something's up a little bit, but we had also finally felt we had gotten stable. We were living close to family. The job seemed great, well paid. We had an amazing church. It just felt hey, we're finally settled. We're finally getting on our feet. This is really great.
And it was one of those things where I don't even remember how it started. I realized with myself, after eating certain things, I just didn't feel that great. And I know it was also, I think, with one of our kids, we realized that, as a baby, you change diapers, and some of those diapers were not. They're just bad, it was based upon basically food that we were eating. And it was talking to my oldest sister, really just got us started, because she's older, has some health issues, she's been going over them longer. She basically was on this very strict diet to try and figure out what was going wrong. And so that's when we started trying to figure out what was going on, cutting things out, and helped for a bit, but it was up and down. And then when we were there, basically I got non-rehired at my job because it was my second year there, and how it goes in California, you're not tenured until after your second year is done. So I was halfway through my second year, and they were basically like, nope, you're not coming back, we're not rehiring you. And we got to move up to where we grew up, actually, with that. There was another job at the high school we actually went to, and got a job there.
And we were happy to move It's a beautiful place. We got to move back close to both of our sets of parents, family, great school district. We were, as hard as that was to feel like, oh, we're moving again, we were very happy with where we were headed.
And it was tough for me because it was like, you know, you think you're getting things together, and then basically people are like, no, you're not good enough for us to want to rehire you. So obviously that's tough. But we did get a job up there, and it was tough because it was not a great, it's not a great paying place. And for having, we had
Two with
two
one on the
kids
way.
with
Jason
one
was.
on the way. Yeah, we actually, when I got told in Palm Springs I wasn't getting rehired, I think we had just found out 2 days before
Yes.
that Ellen was pregnant with our third. So moved up there. Again, not a great paying job, but it was a job, and so we were working there. I was working there, and Ellen
that's when I started doing some work online, virtual assistant work. I was doing tech support, like different things, helping with setting things up. I really enjoyed the technical side of things, and so I started getting clients and was like, okay, like, hey, at least we have a little extra income coming in, and you know, squeezing it in, kids' nap times, things like that. But around that time, Tim started getting worse.
Yeah, so it was kind of a decline over a few years. Basically, after about 2 years of teaching up there in Lake Arrowhead area, that start of that third year was just awful. Like, I was just exhausted, had no energy, was having trouble
Thinking
conversation. I was missing at least 1 day of school a week, sometimes 2 as a teacher. You know, that's obviously not good. And it was just one of those things where we didn't know what to do, but Ellen had a decent job, but it wasn't full time either. It was technically hourly, but not guaranteed.
It was ramping up. The lady I was working for had more and more work for me, so it was.
So we actually transitioned to Ellen's income, I actually talked to my school district, try to figure things out, and basically it was like, can you stay till the end of the semester, which I did. And at the end of the semester, so halfway through the school year, I actually quit, or resigned or whatever. And we were on Ellen's income. And that was a weird time for me because I was not feeling great. And it was also that feeling of, I'm not holding enough together to be the breadwinner. I'm reliant on my wife, which, isn't bad overall, but it's just that feeling of myself of not feeling adequate was really big in that time, and just not feeling well overall. Just really, there's a lot of ups and downs, and there's a lot to talk about that at that time, but it was over 1.5 years basically that I was staying at home. I was trying to help with the kids, but even then I didn't have much energy, and Ellen was doing all the work and trying to help with the kids. And I don't know what you want to talk about.
Yeah, and I feel like for myself, once we kind of realized something was wrong with Tim, I very pridefully took on, well, I can handle it. If I can take enough on, I can make you better. I can handle this, instead of, relying on God. I was obviously I was reading the Bible. We were semi-attending a church when we were feeling well, but I feel like for myself, it was okay, if I work hard enough, I can do all of that. I can hold us together, and I can do this in my own strength. I can do this.
Or even, God gave me all these gifts, so I can just do whatever is needed and get this done. And I felt that way a bit too at times, where it's just God gave me all these gifts, so I should be able to do everything. And it's obviously not true, but it's that feeling there. And like Ellen said, there was a church up there that we were going to, but didn't really connect with people. It was, we'd known the church from way back when. The church that we actually had both gone to had gone through enough changes we didn't want to go back to it, so we went to this other church up there but again, didn't really connect to people. And there's a couple, for me, there wasn't really much support or understanding up there. Like, again, the church, nothing really there. There's a couple guys at work who are Christians who we actually try to do like, weekly or bi-monthly, meetings and hanging out. And that was good, but every time I kind of talked about it, it was just kind of like, well, just suck it up or whatever. And this was while I was working, and even after I quit, we were still meeting together for a little while.
It was like this attitude of like, well, you're a guy, like you're a man, just suck it up, you're fine. Like just wait till you get older, like all this disconnect of understanding that something was really wrong.
If you feel bad now, wait till you get older, as opposed to, that there were problems. And we were trying different things with the diet where we cut out and everything. Different doctors, and nothing really was, it wasn't making it worse, but it wasn't really making me better. So it was successful in that it wasn't making me worse, but it's also not, I wasn't feeling great. And it just, it was a tough time. And it's so weird because I would have at some point thought, Ellen's doing so much, I'm able to relax, be at home and try and recover. I would have thought that I would have been doing so much better, but it wasn't. It was marginally better, but not like I thought it would be. It was a time to kind of rest and heal.
Yeah, we both kind of thought like, okay, this, God's provided this job for me. This is the solution. Like, Tim's gonna feel great, and we'll be able to just work this out. Like, and then I got pregnant with Leela during this time, our fourth, yeah. And the pregnancy was pretty smooth. I was working. I loved my work. I loved my job. And we had a wonderful home birth with her, like smooth birth. Mm-hmm. And within a week or two after I gave birth to her, I jumped back into work very quickly because at the time
it was work from home.
It was work from home, and
easy stuff you could do.
We didn't have a lot of leeway budget-wise at the time. Right. But I started feeling very emotionally flat. Like we figured out pretty quickly that I was probably struggling with some sort of postpartum depression. Like looking back, unsurprising with everything that was going on, but at the time it caught us off guard. Like I'd never struggled. Like it was always I'll just get up and get it done and I'm fine. And it felt very, I don't know what the word is, to feel like I couldn't just power through it.
Right. You just go and get everything all the time, and it was tough for me to notice. Mm-hmm. Again, I know I wasn't doing great at the time, but it's one of those things where I, look back and like, why didn't I notice this stuff? But it was tough. And also on your end, you were not asking for help.
Oh yeah, I did not. No, because at the time I was like, oh, like again, if I power through, if I work hard enough, Tim's gonna feel better. Tim will feel, like I have to hold it together, because if I can't hold it together, then Tim, like I have to. And I think that prevented me too from, like I did get good support from my sister-in-law, like amazing support, and my midwife, but I didn't get as much help as I should have. I was very much like, I don't have the time for that. I have to hold it together.
And I don't even know if I would have been in a good mindset to give good support at that point, because I feel like I was still having some issues. And our budget wasn't like great either, so it's still all that stress and everything coming through us. It was a tough point. And it's one of those things where, again, you just kind of think you just power through it. I can do this, and I guess we'll probably talk about it more later, but it's like there's this idea of, we like to say we could just do everything, but we're human. We're not designed to be able to do everything. And that was, I guess, kind of the first pathways, cracks in that armor, where we were just trying to figure out what can we do, and what should we try and do, and what do we need to rely on God for? Because again, for me, up until that point, I was always very much like, okay, God gave me these gifts, so I should be able to do whatever I need, which isn't biblical, but we easily get that mindset. So.
Yeah, that you can do anything you can put your mind to kind of attitude,
which
right?
is very humanistic and not, I mean, it's not what Paul was getting at all when he says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Totally different context there.
So yeah, at this point, my health was getting worse. It was about a year after Leela was born. I was in bad shape, and my main client I was working for was having to cut back hours. And so Tim and I both started applying for whatever jobs we could.
And I admit I was very upset at the idea of going back to work. Like I wasn't doing great, but I was like, work is going to be 10 times worse. And I wasn't necessarily 100% wrong with that, but so I felt very angry at this idea of me having to go back to work. And
I remember just praying, like, okay, God, like, if I need to go get a full-time job outside the home, please make it work. But I was also desperately praying that we would find something for Tim, because I was barely holding it together.
Yeah, you weren't doing, again, I wasn't doing great in noticing that at the time. So it was very tough struggle for Ellen, and just me not, being there as much for as I should. But that was
we didn't get any, like, I applied him to almost every teacher job in Southern to Mid California, almost.
And even a few out of state, I believe.
Yeah,
right?
Some out of state. Yep. And nothing. And then
like
got an email.
End of July, got an email from STEM Academy here in Barstow, and basically was, hey, we saw that you got an application up at EdJoin, and
we really need a math teacher.
We need a math teacher. Would you like to come down to interview? And again, I was like, Barstow. I'm sure. At that point, I think if both of us were to make a list of top 10 places not to live in Southern California, Barstow would be somewhere on that. Maybe not number one, but somewhere on that list. But I go down for the interview. I felt I did terrible in the interview, but they apparently thought I did great, because they literally it was like next day or even that day. I don't remember.
Same day, yeah.
So I had to drive down here like hour and a half, do the interview, drive back home, and I think the next day they were like, yeah, we'd like the job. And this was literally just a couple weeks before the school would start, like 2 weeks at the most. I can't remember how far, but 2 weeks at the most. And I, again, still just kind of angry, didn't want to accept, but knew I should. And so I accepted, and there was a rush to come down here, like
trying to find a place
to live. Like we had like 2 weeks to find a place to live. We got the place we're actually we were able to buy now, but we were renting it for the first couple of years we were here, and it was. I was like the first few days I was living here, sleeping in like a couple blankets and like a blow-up mattress, while Ellen was at home packing up everything and trying to get help there. That's how we came to Barstow. So it was kind of crazy for that. But even, is this more you want to talk about moving here?
Yeah, I was going to say, as much as, we were joking, like, oh, Barstow, like, I felt for myself, I was this hope of like, okay, like, I finally don't have to work. So like, I was still going to work a little bit every week, but I don't have to work so much. Like this will make everything better. Like there's kind of this like, okay, like I'll be fine then. Like this will solve all of our problems. And we found, I don't know if I want to talk about how we found the church, like if we found the church.
Yeah. So I started working, but the first week we were here, we were just looking basically online around everywhere, just trying to see what churches were in the area.
We found this church, but they were going to have like a guest speaker the Sunday we wanted to attend. It was like a special, and so we're like, okay, we want to make sure we wait to see the pastor. We want to see the actual pastor and everything, because we're new in the area, just wanted to check out churches until we found one we liked. The first week we were here, we went to a different church, and it was a church where we were like, it wasn't terrible. Like the teaching seemed very generic and not really in depth. And so we went there, we were like, we could do this
but let's look around for some other churches.
We also felt like it was a bigger church. It would have been very easy for us to just,
Get
okay,
lost in
we'll
the
go there,
crowd.
and well, it's been, and we knew we weren't going to get involved. Like, we had already
Right.
struggled with that. We weren't going to get involved. We weren't going to.
It'd be just like the
plug in.
church back
Yeah,
where
yeah.
we were before, where we were going but weren't involved. Second week, we came to Lenwood Community Church, and I just remember Serena at the door. Greeting us, welcoming us. Didn't even realize she was the pastor's wife at the time. She was just so energetic, and
Everyone was just
and,
so
and
welcoming.
then yeah,
and,
everyone
like,
came and said hi to us. It was really just cool to see that welcoming feel. And
I think
when
Dave cracked was it a
Star Wars
Star
or Star
Trek
Trek
joke during the sermon?
during the
I'm like,
sermon,
it's
like,
all
okay.
biblical teaching, and he's like a sci-fi.
Yeah. So we loved Dave's teaching and just the whole sci-fi fun stuff. You can't go wrong with that. And so we decided to come back, and we obviously have been here since then. But that year wasn't easy. That first year especially wasn't easy. The last forever, like 3 or 4 years haven't been easy. But that first year I was teaching 8th grade math, and it was a very difficult situation to be in at that point. I would have to say on my end, I wasn't ready to be back in the classroom. I just needed to be. And so that caused a lot of issues because I was trying to figure things out again as I was going along. I didn't feel great or rested or anything.
You were health-wise, you were still in very bad shape.
Yeah, I would
Like,
come
it was
home.
not
I'd
good.
come home and sleep and eat dinner and go back and lay down and then fall asleep and still not feel rested the next morning. And there's a couple months in, and again, it was just a really rough time. Classroom was very rough. That was just a rough year. And I was feeling worse and worse and worse. And then, it was at that time, I remember how many months into the school years it was, just a couple months.
Mm-hmm.
October maybe that year. I just didn't know how to go on, and so we actually called Dave, or you
Yeah,
called
it was
Dave.
November. Yeah,
Was it November?
I asked if
I
I was
was
really worried about Tim, and so I asked,
Awful.
hey, can I text Serena to see if Dave can come over? Although at the time I asked him, but then I had already decided even if he had said no, I was gonna still text Serena to have
Serena.
Dave come over.
And so I remember Pastor Dave coming over and just us sitting and talking, and I was just not in a good spot. Sometimes, I can get very, when I'm not feeling well, my mental state can get very thrown off. Like things that I feel like normal thoughts aren't like that anymore. And so I was very bad, and my mental state was not good, and it was just, you just don't feel like yourself. When you're in those bad mental states, you feel like, and sometimes you feel like there's no hope, and that's kind of how I was feeling at that time. And Dave came over, and Dave has some of the same issues. Different causes maybe, we're not entirely sure because we're still getting things figured out with me, but similar issues where, he has those energy issues, he has those mental fog issues, those just a lot of different problems like that. And it was the first time I felt I got help from a pastor in years, as a pastor. I got help from other people, friends, family, and whatnot, but this is the first time I really felt like a pastor had helped me in more years than I can count. And he had some practical suggestions, and he prayed with me, and we talked, and he just also wanted to help me as best he could. And even, again, practical suggestions, even some supplements that he takes that he was like, hey, are you taking this? And I was like, no. And he's like, these actually can really help regulate this, that, and the other. And it was just very helpful. And it didn't make the year great, but it did bring me up enough to keep going. And the thing is for me, for that year, that was the first year, again where we were talking about earlier, where I went from God's given me these gifts, I can do this, to I cannot do this. Like, there is no way, even with what God's given me, that I can get this done. There's no way. And God broke me in a good way. God broke me then, because I was at my bottom and I was trying to teach and I couldn't teach, and I was trying to be a good husband and I wasn't doing much at all at home. And it was the breaking point of, I can't do this. I need God to do this. And again, that's a very different mindset for me, because I can be very much, okay, God's given me these great gifts. Thank you, God. Okay, I'm going to take these and go do this. And that's how I was for years. But it was also like, oh no, God's given me great gifts, but He's not designed us to be able to do things on our own. You know, we are only human. He didn't give us gifts so we become superhuman. He gives us gifts, but we still need things outside of those. We need God Himself, not just His gifts in our lives. I don't know if there's anything.
Yeah, and around in that first year, like, I know, obviously Tim was still struggling, and I had felt the, like, okay, why aren't I feeling back to normal? Like, I'm not working as much. Why aren't I should be fine now. Like, right. And I read a book called Humble Roots, and it was not a very long book, but it was a very good, like, just realizing how much for myself, like, how much pride I'd had in, like, oh yeah, I can hold us together. Yeah. I can hold it together enough for Tim. Like, I can, like, powering through on our own strength. And just realizing that no, I can't. Because
it is still prideful. Even if you're thanking God for all the gifts and great things He's given to you, it's still prideful saying, I can take on whatever's thrown at me. And we can't. You know, we need obviously each other to help each other, but we need God Himself. And I think that's really what God was working on both of us at that time. For me, definitely, it was that change of focus where I'm not even going to try and do this by myself, because like that was the change of, I'm going to do what I can, but I'm not going to even try and do it by myself, because sometimes God's the last resort. I'm going to try and try and try and try. Oh, okay, I can't do this. God help me, as opposed to, God, I need your help every day. And again, that's what that year changed in me quite a bit. And again, it was a terrible year. If there's one year in my life I'd not want to go back and redo, it'd be that year. I mean, there's other bad years, don't get me wrong, but that would be the one I would not want to go back and redo. And again, I feel like that was kind of the crux for change for me in a lot of ways. And that was only 3 years ago, 4 years ago, yeah. And so, and, you know, we've been here since then. I don't know if there's anything you want to talk about that time or not.
Just, I feel like obviously God was working on both of us that year separately. Like, we weren't communicating super well at a good depth. Obviously we were talking, but not at a super in depth. And we were both still hurting from the last few rough years before that. A lot of, I think, bitterness on probably both sides a little bit, and frustration. Right. And I don't know if it was at that time that we started doing more date nights, where we started actually talking more and being a lot more open about, like, this is what I'm struggling with.
Intentional with this. Because
quite
with us, it was very easy for things to just kind of pass them off and go, I'm having this problem, but everyth's okay. You know?
Or for me, like, I was like, I knew Tim was struggling with stuff. I didn't want to burden.
Right.
Like, I was like, I don't want to burden Tim with what I'm struggling with.
Right. And so what usually happened is things would build up internally until we had a talk about something, and usually those talks weren't bad, but they were, you know, we chatted things out, we talked things out, but they were much more emotional than they should have been. I mean, again, not that we were yelling at each other or anything, it's more just like, I need this change now, or you know, and we were gracious with each other in those moments, but it was still too much buildup. We weren't talking about things soon enough, and so yeah, we were. Was it just, yeah? It was about then we were, you know, we became very intentional on, hey, let's just sit and talk.
How frequently we communicated and
you know, like we try and do it like once a week or once every couple weeks at the most, where it's like all we get is a couple, you know, cups of tea, and you know, phones are off to the side.
put a
Kids
movie on for the kids.
doing their own thing, and just sit and talk, or even just, you know, sit at whatever. And doesn't, and not that we always talk about super important things then, but it's just
that is our time where,
you know, if there's something we want to talk about or something we feel come up, you know, we got used to that as being our time, and so it's very easy to now to just, hey, this is something I was thinking about. We should talk about this, and it also helps again that things weren't building up to that point where we needed to, so it became easier to talk about them as well. And yeah, and I don't know if there's something you want to say about. I mean, anything particular about the year since then? I think that was the biggest thing. But there's a few things we might want to talk about. But
yeah, I feel like God used that so much to teach us how to work through, like, with each other for not like the things that we were struggling with, like your health problems and my residual health things, like that we learned how to healthily deal with them. And
because it's really easy. It's really easy to just say, okay, we've been doing this. Just keep doing this, even if it's not quite working, because we didn't want to talk about it yet. And then it was like, okay, now it's definitely not working, and we need to talk about this. And so it was good to actually have those conversations and have that ability to change more. But, so that was a rough year. End of the year, I was actually able to move up to the high school, which was a good change, and I taught science, and I'm teaching science. And still difficult. I mean, it wasn't easy. I was just struggling still with energy issues, and there's lots of ups and downs. And it was funny because that was the year COVID started, and so it was actually a relief. Strangely, you know, when COVID got bad enough where we had to basically work from home for that year. And not saying that was a good thing for the students wise, but for me, just feeling it was a relief. And that year, because we at Barstow, we cut off the last quarter of school, and we were supposed to do stuff independent study, but we were not prepared for it as a school, so very little got done that last quarter, just the bare minimum of what we needed to do. But then the next year is also distance learning. And again, not necessarily great for the students or for learning, but I felt a relief because I could be at home and I could try and get rest. And between periods, or if there was a time that we were supposed to have as like basically office hours where the kids could join our Zoom call or Google Meets call and, you know, come ask us for questions. And if no students were in there, I could just, you know, have the camera and mic on and just say, you know, have a screen on that says, say something if you need me. And and sometimes I even just laid down on the floor there just to get rest because I was just still not feeling great.
Well, I felt like it was also a very healing time for us to having, when I worked from home, having things get so unhealthy and not good for both of us, like to have that time where you got to be working at home and things were good. Like obviously you were still struggling health-wise, but like where we were in a healthy place, like spiritually and with our marriage, like it was interesting that how much of a blessing COVID was, I feel like, for us and our family.
And the next year after COVID was over, or I mean, well, you know, the distance learning was over, was also just a tough year. I mean, this is just last year for us now. That was still a tough year, and it's again lots of ups and downs. And one of the good things for me is we finally got a doctor who's kind of taken this seriously, and you know, doing a little better now. Not great, not amazing, but I definitely say the start of this year 10 times better than the start of last year. Even with all the little issues that you always get at the start of the school year. So I don't know if there's anything else that you want to chat about. But the big thing for me with all this is it always felt like every time there's a situation where it's like we couldn't go on or we didn't know what to do next, doors always open. And they weren't always the doors we wanted. They weren't always the doors we thought were best or we would have liked, but God always provided a way for us. It was, and this has been all throughout. Like even at the early, when I was saying we were moving, time after time after time, it was always felt like whenever we needed it, something opened up. Again, not necessarily what we wanted, but what would help us. And just this need to rely on God was also just this huge change where, again, it's so human to want to just do things under our own power. Again, even if we're thanking God for all the circumstances, thanking God, we still want to do things under our own power. And it's a huge relief to think, I don't have to do this under my own power. Yeah, I don't have to say, because to me, like, there's that idea, again, for the longest time, like, okay, God gave me these gifts. If I'm not using to their very maximum, I don't deserve more from God. And that's not God's attitude towards his gifts. He wants us to use them. He wants us to use them well.
We're not supposed to
We're
just
not supposed to just sit back and do nothing with them. But there's a difference between saying, I have to maximize everything in order to get more. There's a difference between that and saying, I just got to use what God gave me. I don't need to use it perfectly because he knows I'm not perfect. And he'll still give me more grace. And there's relief in that because it's like the I have to use my gifts to the maximum is still all about me and what I can do and what I can accomplish. And that's not what the Christian life is about. It's not about me and what I accomplish. It's about what God wants to accomplish. And our path has always taken so many twists and turns. It's like, I mean, if you would have asked us when we got married, where do you see yourself in 13 years, Barstow would not have been on the map. If you would have asked, 13 years ago, do you expect to, have health problems like this? No, because I was young enough then where I could, we actually looked at a lot of the issues, and I've had these issues all my life. But I was young enough I was able to power through them. And just as I got older, just that energy just has died. And so I can't power through them anymore, And again, that's just a very humbling experience. And having all those things happen at once just a few years ago just really, very humbling. But again, no matter what happened, God was there. God was providing. God was opening the next door when we were at the edge of the last cliff, the next thing comes by where we can jump to. And again, it was just very relieving once, there's that realization is, I don't have to hold on for dear life. And if I make a small slip, then that's my own fault. Well, it is my own fault, but we still got God's grace no matter how much we slip or fail. So, So again, this is just a little bit of our testimony, a lot bit of our testimony, I guess. And again, I'm Tim, and this is my wife Ellen, and we're at Linwood Community Church, and we're doing this with Lefty, and Les is over there too, and just hanging out. So we'll be doing more of these. I think we're going to be doing one with Les coming up, and we'll put that up as well soon. And just the other thing is, if you're at church or heard Lefty at church, or if you're just watching this is something we want to do with anyone who is part of this church or this Christian community that wants to share a little bit about yourself and share with those around, and maybe encourage others around with what you've gone through and what God's done for you. So thank you. I'll see you later.